writers. Coming up in the show, I will discuss why I migrated away from MailChimp and the steps involved. I will also discuss my decision to merge my author and writing tips websites. In terms of writing, I will share where I'm at with missing book 2 and the steps I need to take before I start writing my short story. But first, an update on what I'm currently reading. While I was on holiday, I ended up not doing any reading. The reason for this is I tend to do the majority of my reading while I'm working on my business during the week. Because I was on holiday and spending time with my husband, it was hard to squeeze this into my new holiday mode. To avoid this in the future, I need to incorporate reading into my nighttime routine. I'll let you know how I get on with this. Actually, now that I've said that, I do actually remember that I did read Killing the Top 10 Sacred Cows of Indie Publishing and Killing the Top 10 Sacred Cows of Publishing, both by Dean Wesley Smith, during the first week on my USA trip while Roland was working. Nevertheless, at present, I'm 3 books behind my reading goal for the year. As of last Thursday, I started reading The Temple of the Gods by Andy McDermott while attempting to catch up on my task list for my author and coaching businesses. At the end of last week, I reached the 49% mark of the story in the Kindle Whispersing for Voice edition. I know that not everyone loves to be read to, but obviously I don't have this issue. The Temple of the Gods is the 8th book in the Wild Chase series. At this point in the series, the discovery of Atlantis has already occurred, which is starting to encourage me to purchase the previous books in the series. Even as I say this now, there's a part of me that wants to open Amazon and search for those books. What can I say? I'm a sucker for an archaeological thriller, which leads me to point out that I'm trying to get familiar with this series so I can start writing the first book in my Maximilian Nichols thriller novels. Yes, I want to write 2 types of thrillers at once. I realised that in the last behind the scenes podcast diary, which was episode 20, I mentioned that I'd be filming a few other podcast diaries in the same location. As you can see, that didn't work out as planned. For some crazy reason, I thought I had an extra week in San Francisco, but I was wrong. I'm putting that down to jet lag. The other business fail I experienced while travelling had to do with my plans for video blogging. I brought my monopod and Manfrotto grip for my iPhone, and for some reason the clamp no longer holds my smartphone tightly. Instead, it jiggles around. This made it challenging to film travel vlogs, and I was worried that my phone would either fall off or get stolen while vlogging. While packing early in May, I thought I made a great choice to not bring my mirrorless DSLR, but I now regret that choice. So that was another lesson learned. During May, Roland and I spent 10 days in San Francisco, 5 days in Los Angeles, and the weekend in Vegas. After that, we spent 3 days in the super hot and humid Miami, followed by 7 days in New York before boarding a plane to fly back to London. Upon arriving in London, we spent the day recovering and unpacking and packing a small suitcase for our trip to France for the weekend. The France trip was to meet up with family for the baptism of Roland's youngest nephew. At the end of all of these trips, I ended up putting on a little bit of extra weight and developed 3 blisters on my left foot due to the walking around Miami and New York, and these blisters were massive. For those of you who are curious, over on my blog at ameliahay.com/BTS021, I will share the photos from San Francisco, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Miami, and New York. And for those of you who are just curious, this is my Canon mirrorless DSLR. It's I can't remember which one it is. I have to follow it down. It's the EOS M3. They have another one that actually flips up sort of this way. If that makes sense, it sort of flips out this way. Yes, so at the time this was the only one, and I have the 15 to 45 millimeter lens that I sort of brought it as a kit, but I do know you can get them, you can just buy the bodies separately. You can use the other Canon lenses with it, but you have to use an adapter. And what happens when you use an adapter is you lose something. You lose a part, I think it's quality, I think it might be aperture. I think you lose a bit of the aperture on the lens. So that's sort of something to think about. There is a part of me that wants to upgrade to the one that flips out, because I eventually want to use this with a teleprompter, just so I can avoid using my iPhone, because there's a few issues with the app and I'm not particularly happy about it. So at the moment I'm using that on my iPhone. And it's great as well, considering what it does. It's so good. But occasionally there's sort of screw ups and you get it. I guess while I'm here, I think it's possibly good for me to point out that there are slight differences between the video podcast and the audio version. Obviously, I can't talk about my camera on the audio podcast. It's just going to be a bit weird. And I can't talk about what I'm drinking, because I technically can't. Well, I can't talk about, the tea that I'm drinking while I'm recording the podcast, because this is a video. I can't drink tea as I record. I can sort of drink it between takes, but that's just a bit weird. While I was in New York, I received a super disturbing message from MailChimp Legal about the changes to the MailChimp features and billing. I thought it was kind of ironic, considering it came from MailChimp Legal. After reading the email and various other blog posts by indie authors, including David Gogren, I decided to migrate away from MailChimp. My decision to move had a lot to do with the fact that I've been using MailChimp since 2013, and they couldn't guarantee that I could keep my existing monthly payment and features. Well, they could only guarantee the price for a limited time. Because I listen to the Self-Publishing Journeys podcast religiously, I've decided to migrate to MailerLite after hearing about the host's experience with the company. And because I sort of write the script, and then I take about a week to record these podcast diaries. So essentially this is last week, not the current, not the end of the you get it. I'm a week behind, but that doesn't surprise you. I guess this is a note from the future. So when I migrated to MailerLite, I started using it immediately. And the first thing I noticed, which was quite a surprise for me, is my open rates are much higher with MailerLite than they were with MailChimp. And that surprised me, because I'm aware that there were issues last year with MailerLite to do with one of their servers was flagged as spam. So if you had something, I have a funny feeling it might have been Gmail or Yahoo or one of those free email providers that everyone uses. Based on my current experience, I now can tell that they've sorted that out, and there's issues with open rates and people not getting the emails. So that was actually a pleasant surprise. I guess I'm the type of person that expects the best but prepares for the worst. Yeah, that's right. That's the right order. Yeah, expects the best but prepares for the worst. And I was really pleasantly surprised. And I'll link that blog post from David Gogren in the description box below, just for those of you who are interested in reading it. And I'll also link the Self-Publishing Journeys podcast below as well. At the moment, I'm still paying for MailChimp until the subscribers sitting in my 3-act structure Scrivener template automation queue have reached the end. And that's the painful thing about moving mailing list providers. At some point, you're paying for 2 products. While moving your list is as easy as exporting your list as a CSV file and uploading it somewhere else, you have to set up your automation queues from scratch. Since I'm a one-man band, I had to do this all on my own. First, I had to recreate my email templates, then set up the automation queues. At present, I have 5 automation queues, and one of them has 15 emails that are delivered on a weekly basis. During the process of setting up my new list, I made a mistake with my list segmentation. When you use MailChimp, you cannot have one list and have subscribers sign up for multiple things. It's a straightforward system. So if you have more than one lead magnet or have more than one blog or genre that you write in, you're required to have multiple lists. This multiple list thing means you can have one email address signed up for numerous lead magnets and thus pay for them multiple times. I found a way to get around this feature in MailChimp using a feature that not too many people know about. Just a side note, I'm considering creating a tech tutorial on how to use this feature, and I'm going to make it available to my patrons first. It'll be exclusive to this audience for a certain period before I publish it publicly. But this isn't true with MailerLite. In MailerLite, you have one list that you can segment into multiple groups, which removes the need for the complicated CRM system that I had implemented with MailChimp. And you're not charged multiple times for the same email address like with MailChimp. Yay! Now back to the mistake that I made. I added custom fields upon importing my list, which was populated by the data in my hidden MailChimp fields. After realizing my error, I had to move my subscribers around into multiple groups, which wasn't difficult. So far, I'm pretty happy with the transition, but the migration does not end there. I had to go back to my website and create 9 new email opt-in forms and change the sign-up forms at the bottom of all 116 blog posts and 20 website pages, and that took me several days. However, it wasn't all that bad. It presented me with an opportunity to go over my blog posts and change any link errors, and gave me a list of blog posts that I need to update. So all in all, it wasn't the world's biggest tragedy. During the first week of my USA trip, I decided to merge my author and authorpreneur websites together. What prompted this was I got tired of maintaining 2 websites and blogs. I tend to focus more on the authorpreneur blog and podcast website because it's larger, and I tend to forget about my author website and blog, which is for marketing purposes. Because I use the Divi theme, I have the option of having 2 blogs on the one website. Technically, I don't have 2 blogs. This appearance is achieved through categorizing the various types of posts and creating blog pages that only display posts in a specific category. As a result, I have 3 blog pages, one for the podcast, the authorpreneur blog, and the behind the scenes author blog. I also have a blog post page for season 1 and another for these podcast diary episodes. So that's 5 pages, not 2 or 3. At present, I'm taking a break from my thriller novella Missing until I receive feedback from my editor. I'm expecting a report from the editor towards the end of June, so I'll have to drop whatever I'm working on and focus on those edits until I need to resubmit the novella for the second round of edits. In the previous podcast diary, I mentioned that I needed to rewrite quite a few scenes from Silence because of the change in the setting, and also I needed to work on the motivations of a few of the characters because their actions weren't making much sense. I had planned on doing all of this while I was on vacation. You can probably tell by the language that I'm using. Nevertheless, I did get this done. When I packed my bags for the trip, I forgot to include my research from my weekend at Oxford and a pile of materials where I tagged images of the locations. Let's be honest, I could have looked up these locations on the internet, but it turns out that I needed a break. And as a result of this break, I've returned from my holiday feeling refreshed and ready to get back to writing. Since I've returned from France, I've made a bit of progress on my short story. How much, you ask? I'm excited to announce the working title for the story is The Lawn. Essentially, the story will be an Easter egg for Missing. There's a brief reference to the event that occurs in this short story towards the end of Act 1. In the final version of the ebook and paperback, the reader should notice a footnote with a link to get the free short story, as well as the sign-up page at the back of the book. The Lawn is about an art theft gone wrong. James Roland is at the Carmichael estate having afternoon tea at the request of Alistair Carmichael, who wants to show James his private art collection before it's open to the general public. Alistair is hoping to drum up interest through the Northampton Tribune newspaper. But the painting goes missing and something unexpected turns up on the front lawn. So far, I figured out what painting goes missing and how much it's worth, and why the painting is stolen. It's actually a real painting that was sold in an auction to an unknown buyer around the time the story takes place. I'm super excited that all of these elements are lining up. This week, I need to start writing the first draft, which will be somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 words. After this, I will need to revise the story and then decide what type of editing I will need and whether I want to hire a professional beta reader. So in light of all these updates, what are my plans for next week? Write the first draft of The Lawn. Write the final scenes of Silence. Iron out the plot and character motivation issues of Silence. Outline the first 2 writing tip episodes for season 2 of the podcast. Start up my Improve Your Fiction Writing weekly email series, film a tech tutorial on my MailChimp mailing list segmentation secrets to release to my Patreon audience. Next week, I'll let you know about my progress on my short story, The Lawn, my revision plans for the short story, and my decision about whether I will hire a professional editor and a professional beta reader for The Lawn. If you like this video, then give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to this channel and want to be notified about more videos just like this, then hit the subscribe button and click the bell icon. Thanks for listening, and happy reading and writing, everybody.